Here's a game released in late 2003. 13 was and still is to this day a very unique and interesting first-person shooter. I have to say I had no plans to make this video initially. Sure, it's a game that I have fond memories of as a youth, playing on the PS2 and the Xbox, but I never really felt the urge to go back and dive into it again. However, after the debacle that was the 2020 remake, no, I won't be covering that mess, I found that the folks over at the GOG store were giving away copies of the original. And so, of course, I picked it up thinking that I might have a bit of a mess around and have a little look at the old cel-shaded graphics and see how well they held up now in 2021 with 1440p resolution. Quickly, as I discovered that this is a game released back in the early 2000s, I had to find some mods through the internet, Google, to get over how horrid the mouse smoothing and acceleration was that was present when I opened the game and fired it up and got to the menus. Also, I had to find a fix to get the game to run in widescreen. Luckily, this game has got some good support from the fans, and acquiring these fixes was fairly easy to do and only took 10 minutes or so. And I'm really glad that I pushed ahead and looked into getting those fixes, because this game is actually absolutely fantastic. Now, if you're watching this video, you probably already know at least the concept of the game's story. Based off of a mid-80s Belgian graphic novel, the French development team at Ubisoft really did wonders in translating a gripping comic-themed story. The story is about an amnesiac who seeks to discover his past. That's you, the protagonist. You wake up on a beach with very little understanding of what's going on, and all of a sudden a bunch of guys with guns and helicopters are after you as you scurry along to find your past and stay safe. Now, I won't spoil the story for anyone who's yet to play the game, as it's really one of the highlights of this package. It's a story that's truly well told and all unfolds in a fantastic pace that keeps the player invested. It does this with the help of short in-game cutscenes and flashbacks, along with some awesome comic book strip style end and pre-mission animations. The whole thing is really fun, and I was constantly left wanting to know what was next and how it all fits together with my backstory, and finding out how the rest of the story unfolds. Thankfully, it's not just a well-told, interesting story here. The game is, of course, a first-person shooter, and I found it to be a joy to play. Whilst there is only a small selection of guns at your disposal, they all feel great. Whether it's the pistol, magnum, shotgun, assault rifle, or the minigun, they all feel satisfying to use and all have their place among a few other weapons. I was often switching between all of the guns on any given mission to dispatch the enemies. Not necessarily just because I ran out of ammo or I needed to be more strategic, but just because the guns themselves are genuinely fun to mess about with. Something about the feeling of these cartoonish guns and their accompanying art style just works so well. Speaking of strategy, however, the game is not just a run and gun type affair. Oh no, there's some James Bond level early 2000s stealth on offer here too. Certain levels or parts of missions require you to keep out of sight, typically either by knocking out guards or killing them in other silent ways. This is actually really fun and bulks out the rest of your armory with a few more weapons, such as objects that you just find lying around, chairs, bottles, for instance. You also acquire throwing knives and by far the best weapon in the game, which is a scoped crossbow. I can't tell you the satisfaction that I was getting from pinging a guard on the other side of a map in the head and watching the little comic book pictures show their death. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, I know I said I used all the weapons in the game previously, but that's probably only because you get very few darts for most of the game. By the time you unlock the 3-dart clip for this gun, I could easily play the whole game with only this weapon if there were enough darts. And I'm sure the game would be just as fun. The gunplay here is a huge positive. Now, I know I haven't spoken in depth about the biggest selling point of this game yet, and that's because you can clearly see it in this video. It's the visuals. This, to me, as an animation, cartoon-loving guy, is just a beautiful game to play, even after nearly 20 years. I remember at the time everyone saying cel-shaded graphics would age well, and at least with this game they were absolutely right. Again, I don't want to talk about the remake for this game, but it feels like they were trying too hard with the lighting, the shading, the textures. The original here is basic, but it's just so wonderfully crisp. It's vivid, yet it's also intense when it needs to be. It's just an absolute dream to look at. I honestly think that if another game came out looking similar to this, now it would be really well received. As mentioned, the comic book graphic novel theme runs throughout the whole game. Even a cool effect that when a nearby explosion would go off, the whole screen would kind of rock in this very cool bordered effect that I don't actually recall seeing in any other game, even to this day. I really think that cel-shaded graphics need to make a comeback, similar to how the 2D pixel art style games did a few years ago. I'm playing a lot of original Xbox games at the moment, and it's staggering how many still look really good to this day on that old hardware, and it's all due to the Toon style visuals. But I digress. Before I talk about a few minor negatives that I have with this game, I must mention the voice acting now, because it's both outstanding and lackluster at the same time. There are real high points that come from General Carrington, one of the characters that is with you through most of the game, and this is voiced and delivered by none other than Adam West. It's absolutely exceptional.
Ready, son? Hey, errand boy, come here. I gotta take another leak.
Also, the at the time rapper Eve puts in a very good performance as the fiery, hot sidekick Major Jones.
Major Jones, first officer for General Carrington? Ring a bell? Carrington went missing 3 days ago. He was leading a parallel investigation into President Sheridan's assassination.
However, sadly, this is all kind of let down a bit by the main character that you play as. Voiced by XFiles David Duchovny, he just sounds so uninspired, like he was falling asleep the whole time. I mean, I know he's playing a guy who can't remember anything, but you'd think he'd be a bit more frantic and energetic with that, rather than sleepily confused for the whole entire game.
Come on! We've got to leave the base!
It's too late. Give me the access code, quick.
The code?
While we're on the audio, the soundtrack is also pretty cool, and there's dynamic themes that change based on what's happening, and they work absolutely brilliantly as well. Now, for the few negatives that I have with this game, and they're pretty minor to be honest. First off, the game is rather short, easily beaten in under 6 hours if you don't die. However, if you do die, you'll find my next negative, the checkpoint system. And this is really bad to be fair, but it's not that frequent, but it's still frustrating nonetheless to play a game where you sit through a cutscene, make your way through a few minutes of a stage, killing people in a stealth manner, which is fairly slow and meticulous, to come across a boss which can be rather difficult and end up dying a few times maybe on that boss. So what you're having to do is that whole sequence from the cutscene through to the gameplay through to the boss fight over and over and over again, because their checkpoints are just really poorly placed. Very frustrating. Or perhaps just as bad, you end up killing a boss, which is a hard-fought battle. You end up with some low health, no health packs, and then you end up in another room with 3 or 4 guys, or another room after that with a couple more guys, and end up dying and having the checkpoint right back before you kill the boss. So meaning you have to fight the boss all over again. It's just really frustrating, and even in 2003 this is just inexcusable. And I think that this is probably the worst part of the game, but luckily it's only a few poorly placed checkpoints. Now the last negative I have with this game is the actual AI from the enemies. It's pretty bad in most places, to be honest. And now it's not so bad that they sort of get themselves stuck in random places and glitch out and bug out. It's more a fact that they're just quite unresponsive. You might place a dart just a few millimeters over one of the enemy's heads, and it would clearly go whizzing past, and they don't even move. It's quite disappointing to see. They just completely ignore it. Well, luckily the satisfying gunplay actually makes up for this poor AI, but you'd like the AI to be a bit more consistent, because at times they're actually really dangerous and pretty good, and they kill you pretty quickly if you're not careful. So it's just a shame that this is just not the same all the way through the game. But that's it though. This game is overwhelmingly good and very overlooked at the time, and even now I feel like not many people mention it. There certainly should have been a sequel, and I believe they actually did plan on having a few games. Judging by the graphic novels, these games would have played out through the similar story of that, and would have been quite interesting, I think. But sadly, based on poor sales, that killed this possibility. Hopefully one day they'll remake this and reboot the franchise, and we... never mind. Well, there you go. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and please, if you do, leave a comment down below, maybe your thoughts on the game or memories on the game, or just some criticism of this video. And make sure you hit the like button, and please subscribe. I want to make a few more videos like this based on specific games or groups of games rather than just tech-based stuff. So if you would like to see some more of that, let me know. And all the best. Cheers.